Right now, Secretary of State Hilary Clinton just faced a grilling on Capitol Hill. But the question is, did the big show really yield any real answers, or was it all just political theater? And next, after yet another school shooting, yes, you heard me right, we are asking if this in fact is what it's come to. Should we just accept that this is the tragic reality in this 21st century America here, and just that, a harsh reality, or should we and must we demand more? And later, truth or fiction? Can these guys actually be believed here? Think about the big stories that have commanded the news cycle recently, from Lance Armstrong to Teo to even Beyonce lip syncing at the inauguration. What is real and what isn't? Is it tough to tell anymore? Good evening, everybody, and welcome to RFL. I am Richard French, and thanks so much for joining us this Wednesday evening, January 23rd. A lot to get to this evening, including some developing stories as we speak. But we begin with Secretary of State Hilary Clinton, the outgoing secretary. She was on the Hill today facing questions from members of Congress on what exactly happened in the run-up and during and in the immediate aftermath of the attack on the American consulate in Benghazi on September 11th. She was at times tearful and at other times very forceful. Let me bring in Andrew Whitman, who has that story.
Well, Rich, this is scheduled to be the final time that Hillary Clinton testifies before Congress as Secretary of State. She faced tough questions, but there were also plenty of compliments and appreciation for her years of service. Today, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton faced a grilling on Capitol Hill.
Nobody wants to sit where I am and, have to think now about what coulda, shoulda, woulda happened.
The hearings were a long time coming, postponed by Clinton's recent health issues. Lawmakers have been eager to question her about the September 11th attack in Benghazi. 4 Americans were killed, including the U.S. ambassador to Libya. Republicans say the Obama administration dropped the ball.
The dots here were connected ahead of time. The State Department saw this risk coming.
Clinton acknowledged mistakes, but she fired back at her critics. Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson demanded to know why the administration at first said the attacks were the result of spontaneous protests.
What difference at this point does it make? It is our job to figure out what happened and do everything we can to prevent it from ever happening again, Senator.
Wonderful to see you in good health and as combative as ever.
But Senator McCain wasn't satisfied with Clinton's testimony.
The American people and the families of these 4 brave Americans still have not gotten the answers that they deserve.
Senator Rand Paul said he would have relieved her of her duties if he was president.
I'm glad that you're accepting responsibility. I think that ultimately with your leaving, you accept the culpability for the worst tragedy since 9/11, and I really mean that. Had I been president at the time, and I found that you did not read the cables from Benghazi, you did not read the cables from Ambassador Stevens, I would have relieved you of your post. I think it's inexcusable.
And this morning, Clinton grew emotional and said the Benghazi deaths weren't just policy, they were personal.
I put my arms around the mothers and fathers, the sisters and brothers, the sons and daughters.
Hillary Clinton leaves the State Department more popular than ever. In the latest ABC News Washington Post poll, 67% of Americans said they had a favorable view of her. That is a new high in her long and storied career. Rich?
All right, Andrew, thank you very much. I want to bring in our panel on this. We're joined by Chris Shays, former Republican congressman from Connecticut, and he's got a bio that certainly applies here. During his time in Congress, the ranking member of the Subcommittee on National Security and Foreign Affairs, part of the Oversight Government Reform Committee, also had some time in the Peace Corps, which I think is applicable here as well. Dominic Carter, political journalist and author, also with us, and Andrew Whitman, our senior political correspondent, who you already met. Guys, I got to keep this on during the background. I saw the opening statements this morning, and I saw some of the Q&A both at the Senate and House level. I thought the Secretary acquitted herself very well. But then there was moments from, like I just saw from Senator Paul, who implied here that she was leaving because of the Benghazi scandal, that some way she was being forced out, and we all know she had announced she was leaving long before this. Other lawmakers, intimated that they knew some of this was in the works that was happening in Benghazi, but they chose to do nothing about this. To me, there was a legitimate question about the run-up to it, what happened, the immediate response. But it felt like this was the last vestige of the 2012 electoral campaign, like this was the last presidential debate we were almost having right now, and it really seemed to be taking, I don't know, really some crass political politics. So let me ask you.
What a setup.
Yes, exactly. No, but what I do want to know is this. You're in Congress now, and you want to get the facts, okay? Forget the politics of this. What questions do you think are not only legitimate, but need to be answered going forward for national security, especially for people on the front lines in some of the toughest places of the world, like Benghazi?
Very difficult to get the truth in a 5-minute segment where the person responding knows you only have 5 minutes, and then goes to, you know, the other party, and then back and forth. In my subcommittee, I gave the members 10 minutes. And so one, you can get a little bit better information. I'll tell you the emotion that the legislators have when they go. This was a big deal. She's a well-known figure. Everyone knows that she did her homework when she was in the Senate. My wife always likes to say women do their homework. She did her homework. So she did a good job of talking about it. The one thing, when she said, what difference does it make if we said it was a terrorist attack or not a terrorist attack?
And I got to give a little bit of context, because Senator Johnson, the Wisconsin senator, he pressed her on, among other things. He said, why didn't you debrief all the folks that were the survivors that were at that consulate? And she said, well, because there was an actual investigation. The proper protocol is the State Department's not supposed to be doing the interviewing. The authorities, like the FBI, was actually involved. They had to do it. And he kept pressing, because I saw the context of it. And then she finally snapped at him to say, listen, we had consulates around the Middle East that were being attacked that night. Cairo was taking gunfire. And she said, we didn't know what was happening, and whether it was, whatever the reasoning, the real issue was,
let me stop here and say, when an ambassador is killed, it's a huge deal.
Absolutely.
If it's a spontaneous eruption, that's one thing. If it's a concerted terrorist attack. And the one area where they made a huge mistake was being dismissive and showing that they were pretty naive about what was causing this. They wouldn't have gotten in the mess.
Are you talking about after the fact or before?
After the fact.
But do you think that there was an intentional effort to deceive the American public about what the route was? Yeah.
Oh, no, I think the administration really wanted people to think that the terrorist threat was no longer the threat that it is. And I think before the election, they wanted people to assume that this was just caught us by surprise. You know, that's what I think. And so it does matter to me whether it was a terrorist attack or not. I think if they had said, you know, this was a serious attack, we have indications, not fully known yet, but that this was more than just a spontaneous...
To me, the bigger one would have been, wait a minute, this isn't the first red flag about Benghazi. This place had been targeted, where the late ambassador was staying in his hotel. The parking lot had been bombed. Right. Nobody was caught off guard that this was a hotspot. But when they said, well, why didn't you read the cable? She said, do you know how many cables are addressed to me? 1.4 million cables. You know government better than we do. Is it fair to assume the Secretary of State's going to read every cable?
When you have your embassies threatened, I think that you've got to be really briefed. And people were fired. And part of the reason they were fired, I think, was that they didn't step forward and take action when they should have. And her door would definitely be open on something like this. But the bottom line is, even if you couldn't have protected them on the spot, you needed to make sure you had someone close at hand. When I went into Iraq in April of '03, the State Department had someone about a mile away who was prepared, you know, a group of people prepared to come and get me if I needed help.
We'll speak to that a little bit, Andrew, because there was the undercurrent to this was some of the biggest critics of this also were some of the biggest advocates for cutting funding, right?
Well, Rand Paul, who was the senator who went back and forth and said that he would have fired Hillary Clinton if he had been president, he wanted to cut State Department funding 60, 70%, yeah. So, which would have made the job of protecting the consulate that much more difficult, and also would have stretched the department's resources when it comes to what it can do and who it can protect and things like that. I mean,
And he needs to be called on that. You know, that's a very legitimate criticism. The Congress needs to be focused on as well as the White House.
But if this was, and Congressman, you may be able to give me better insight on this, if this was really about finding the facts and getting the answers, there wouldn't have been a congressional hearing. The congressional hearing is a little bit of a grandstanding. There's a little bit of Q&A back and forth, but it's not the greatest device for getting to the bottom of things.
Well, you know, it used to be. And, you know, they could have said to Mr. Clinton, you know, we know we're at fault. We know you have some things. Let's have an open dialogue. When I had a hearing on why 25,000 people died, hemophiliacs, tainted blood, AIDS, I told the secretary, you know what? You didn't impanel the people you should have, but we all are culpable. We had a really, I think, helpful hearing.
But you also did one thing that I wish they would do more often was, instead of everybody fighting for their 5 minutes of fame, right? There are certain members of every committee, of every party, that are more equipped than others. Right. Defer the time and let the you know, intellectual heavyweights carry on a conversation for 10, 15 minutes instead of getting in one question in edgewise and then the person going off.
That would have made sense.
Dom?
I'm sitting here listening to the congressman, and I know that his heart is in the right place, but what we are seeing in Washington is exactly why the American people are turned off by politics. Under Ambassador Rice, this was the greatest scandal to hit, and whenever an ambassador is killed, it's a very serious thing. But it was the greatest scandal ever when we were in the middle of a presidential campaign. But once her boss, if you will, Hillary Clinton, comes forward to testify, who most members of Congress are afraid of taking on, it's a completely different story. So, I mean, what we saw today was night and day. It's like somebody took the Benghazi balloon and popped the needle in it. It doesn't exist anymore.
What I'm saying is, they're legitimate questions. And also, forgetting politics, we should do things differently. And apparently, of the recommendations that were made, 85% are either, if not done, farther along. So they made changes. But this was a major security lapse. I just feel, as in all of them, as in both parties do it, but this was about posturing and stuff when, and to me it turned me off given the subject matter of 4 Americans were dead, you know?
Both sides or one side? See,
both sides.
Yeah, I mean, I think the administration right away could have said, you know what? This is incredibly serious. We believe it to be a terrorist attack. We're having an investigation. I guess
we're a company. I don't think they knew.
Oh, I think that's naive, honestly.
If you take the Susan Rice Sunday morning thing out of this entire equation, it's just an incident with questions. I mean, it's not the same political ruckus.
What do you mean it's just an incident?
It's the incident that happened. It's not the greatest scandal since Watergate, as some people were calling it, or a clear sign that the Obama campaign was trying to win the election by rook or by hook. It was just the event that happened. It's the Susan Rice Sunday morning thing that turned this into the political firestorm.
What is huge is we lost an ambassador, and no one came to rescue him. That is huge.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yep. We're going to
and his diary was found by the media rather than our own people.
Absolutely. And you know what? One thing, and I know we're heavy, in her opening statements when she talked about the late ambassador, and then talked about the other people, and that the applications for these jobs actually went up after the tragedy, you do remember these people that put themselves in the front lines, knowing the inherent danger attached to it. And it's amazing. They're some of the best Americans, I think, who go to places where none of us would even want to spend 24 hours. And they'll spend entire terms and posts out there, doing thankless jobs for American interests, let alone the people there. Honestly, that I thought came across today. I just want to take 30 seconds to at least acknowledge it. Terrific. All right, we take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to focus on, again, more gun violence. And after yet another school shooting, the president of the college was proud that his staff prepared for the shooting, and he should be. But when I heard the words, it just struck me, is this what it has come to? Stay with us. We'll be right back.